Boom. Let's get it. First solo pod in a very, very long time. Actually, I think it's been 2 years. Close. But I'm very excited to share some life updates with you guys. Talk about what's been going on. And just generally give you guys a little insight as to how I'm feeling as the founder of Duff Radio. I feel like you guys don't necessarily get to see a ton of my life or really know that much about who I am. When I was living in Las Cruces, I do remember filming quite a few episodes and giving a couple lectures on the YouTube channel, but I am not living in Las Cruces anymore, which we can get into. And I'm also not doing video for this episode. After a couple years of running a podcast, it becomes very evident that you need to be able to have a consistent workflow in order to actually put episodes out with any consistency and any type of volume. And adding in video to that workflow just adds steps to the process, takes up more time, adds more variables with DaVinci Resolve, lining up the audio and the video. So until we can grow this thing a little bit more, we have a bigger audience, I'm just going to focus on consistency and volume instead of trying to have video. Of course, if you guys want video, let me know. If it's a feature of this podcast that you enjoy, I am happy to add into it and put more effort in for you guys. But I've been very inconsistent with the release of this podcast and also the consistency of doing interviews for really the entirety of Duff Radio. If you followed from the beginning, you remember how this all started was doing interviews actually in the studio. Emerald Dreams Lab was the first studio that I found myself in. And we did a couple of live in-studio shows with some good friends now. Guys like ConorChillOut, STBtheDON, Mighty Casual, really everyone, iPursue, Riley, just love to those guys. But people who you have seen from the very beginning of Duff Radio, like I said, love to them. But we haven't done like a weekly cadence for the interviews or the podcast at all. So this is the third one in a row. I'm going to get this one out to you guys so that we don't go a week without getting something out to the airwaves. And don't have a guest this week. So I'm just going to use this as an opportunity to catch up with you guys, the audience, practice my own speaking, practice my audio engineering, and do something that is a little outside of my comfort zone, which is just talking, sharing my life, the goods, the bads, the triumphs, and also the trials. And 2025 has had quite the set of trials, but also the biggest set of blessings that I've ever had in my entire life. So let's just rewind. Let's rewind to the last time that you guys heard from me, essentially. In early 2024, I moved from Las Cruces, New Mexico. I was down there in the desert near the border, and that was one of my favorite places that I ever lived. And for whatever reason, the universe, God, quite allowed me to thrive there. And I think part of that was due to my discipline and the routine that I had set for myself. You know, looking back on life, it becomes easier to see what worked and what didn't work. So as I shouldn't say that, but I've been in a period of my life where my own level of consistency, my own level of personal discipline has certainly dipped or almost disappeared. And that's due to changing circumstances. But our resiliency as humans is ultimately what I think determines whether we will be successful or not, how quickly we can adjust and adapt. So I recognize there are clear areas of my life that I need to improve on. But when I was in Las Cruces, I was doing cold showers. I had a gym up the road, so I was very consistent with my weightlifting. I was playing basketball all the time at the gym, and now that I speak, these things are definitely luxuries. I was training at an MMA gym, so I was getting a lot of sparring in, growing in my self-confidence. There were good grocery stores in Las Cruces, and I was making a lot of money, so I felt very well fed, very healthy. I had the luxury of being able to rent a 4-bedroom house, and this was bigger than anywhere I'd lived in my adult life. So living with plenty of space and just enjoying the desert, enjoying the people there, enjoying tons of hiking out in the sun, and exploring myself personally and our beautiful planet and the amazing place that southern New Mexico is on the map. In early 2024, I bought a cabin in Chama, New Mexico. I got a loan on that, a mortgage, for a house that was built in the 80s. It was a beautiful cabin up in the woods, just underneath the Brazos Cliffs of northern New Mexico. Stunning view, gigantic pines and aspen trees that surrounded my cabin and the surrounding areas. Abundant wildlife, elk, fox, eagles, hawks, prairie dogs, blue jays, squirrels, deer. I mean, you name it, those animals are out there. Very remote area, and it's just beautiful. I can remember on several occasions getting a bag of bird seed and shaking it and putting all the seed down on the ground, and just herds of wild deer would come up, 10 at a time. Giant mule deer, much bigger than the white-tailed deer that we're used to seeing here in the Midwest. These deer just look like they're on steroids because they're so jacked and tall, thick necks, and they have a lighter brown coat, more white on their bodies. They're just sturdier animals. Bigger. It's interesting to see how these types of animals have evolved and adjusted based on their climate, where they live on the map. So I had many beautiful experiences there as well, exploring northern New Mexico and southern Colorado. I did some stand-up comedy there in Durango. That was an experience that was new for me and fun to put myself out there that way. I did tons of solo hiking and fishing, exploring Heron Lake State Park, El Vado State Park, the southern San Juan district in Colorado, the mountains that surround it. I had a lot of fun, to say the least. Met some amazing people on the Jicarilla Apache Reservation. I was able to meet some friends there and joined another group of guys that played basketball. Just a consistency in my life. If you're blessed enough that you can have a body that's healthy, friends, and a place where you can play some basketball, I swear it's so good for at least my physical health and my mental health. The competition aspect of it, and just the clarity of mind that it brings. It's a break from the chaos and the problems of the rest of the world. So if you get a chance and you have a basketball court near you, a YMCA, a local gym, whatever it might be, there's good gyms here in Lawrence. I'm very blessed with that. But take advantage of it. And I just mentioned that I'm in Lawrence, so that's the next part of this story. AI has significantly influenced some of the work that I do outside of Duff Radio, and really how I pay my bills. My career has been in legal writing, content writing. I'll explain a little bit more about that. I've spent the last 5 years creating articles online about legal topics. If you don't know, my background prior to starting Duff Radio was in law. When I first met some of the guys that I built this platform with, such as Trevor Allen, local Kansas City videographer who was in my law school class, as well as some of the other guys that I mentioned, like T, Connor, Jamal. Wind's blowing here in the Kansas fields. I'm recording this outside, so if you're hearing some background noise, just know that you are right here with me. But upon meeting those guys, I started this Duff Radio platform and graduated from UMKC in 2021 and moved to Montana to work as a newspaper editor. I've explained that story in the past on the pod. So using that education that I got at UMKC, I started producing tons of articles for Legal Match, which is an attorney-client matching service. They operate out of San Francisco, California, a tech startup. They've been around for decades now. They've done very, very well. But I started contributing to their legal library, their selection of articles that they have online, which they ultimately tailor. They want people to click and hire an attorney through their platform. But over the years, I just started grinding out articles for them and became one of their most published authors. And AI came and tremendously helped me with that type of work. But it also has tanked the industry in a sense. Most of my clients that I eventually picked up after my work with Legal Match cut their rates due to AI. The invention of ChatGPT, which came around in 2023, I believe, just shook everything up. It shook up what it means to be a writer. It shook up what it means to use your voice, to use text as a human. And I'm thankful that my line of work, my industry, has been one of the first that was affected by the first wave of AI, because naturally content writing and text is something that a machine, an artificial intelligence, an LLM can very, very quickly emulate and become very good at. So with my clients cutting their rates or dropping me altogether, this line of work went from being very profitable around 2023, 2024 to becoming not worthless, but dropping off a cliff very, very quickly. And the major players in this industry, the big content agencies that I was working for, slashed their prices by 2/3. So as a contractor, this essentially left me without work, living remotely in a cabin in northern New Mexico in a sparsely populated village, baby on the way, due in May, and I wasn't able to afford my mortgage anymore. It was definitely paying for the location. The house was quite small compared to what I used the bank to purchase it for. And being an older cabin, the plumbing started to go out. So upon trying to sell the house, the plumbing is going out, water's leaking everywhere out of the showers and getting all in the crawl space and behind the walls in the bathroom, which was creating a black mold situation. And come May, my son was born in Espanola, and we couldn't live in that cabin with a black mold situation going on, or at least I didn't want us there. So that expedited the process of selling that cabin even faster. A beautiful family from Los Alamos, a guy who was working at the National Laboratory there, is who purchased the cabin from me. And I lost money on that cabin. So between putting a down payment down on that house and then paying largely interest on the mortgage for just 1 year, I had to bring $2,000 to the closing. So getting out of New Mexico was very, very costly for me. But I trust God's plan, and I made my way back to the Midwest. Packed up everything that I owned over a weekend, and my family came out to New Mexico with a large trailer, and we just packed it up full of all my belongings, the furniture, baby stuff, houseplants. Had to leave my sauna behind, my beautiful red light sauna that sat on my porch in New Mexico, where I watched the snow trickle down. And I made my way back to Lawrence, Kansas. Very selective about this location. It's close to family, short drive. Short drive to get into Kansas City, which is a world-class city where I have many connections at this point. To those of you who listen to this, you might be one of them. I really cannot underestimate the relationships that I've built over the last 4 to 5 years with all of you out there. Those of you that I've heard from, those of you that I speak to all the time, and also those of you that I don't even know about. I'm consistently stunned when I see the analytics for this platform, the podcast and music, as music is also a huge part of what we do here. We've put out 3 albums in the last year, as well as a couple of beat tapes. I mean, we've pushed that about as hard as we could, especially me living 12 hours away from Kansas City, which is where all these guys that I create music with live. And we made that journey back to the Midwest 3 or 4 times in the last year while living in New Mexico. So I was an absolute road warrior last year, taking 12-hour drives back and forth from Kansas City and Lake of the Ozarks to Las Cruces and remote northern New Mexico, which is a beautiful thing to do. It's the Santa Fe Trail. And traveling across western Kansas is absolutely insane. It's just sheer prairie. Unbelievable, vast miles of emptiness where it's just flat. There aren't trees out there, straight up farmland. And it's just oceans of these fields. And it's hauntingly beautiful. Driving there in the early mornings or late at night after the sun's gone down. If you pull over on the side of the road in western Kansas, it's dead silent. There's just no one else out there with you. And that is the reality of traveling across the Great Plains in our country. There are places like Iowa, Kansas, North Dakota, South Dakota, Oklahoma, Texas, that are just very, very empty, giant oceans of plains. The farmland that we all subsist on, essentially. It's absolutely beautiful. But that wasn't my point. I ended up back in Lawrence, which is where I've been since June this year. So I've already been here more than 4 months. It's insane because I'm putting this out in October, and 2025 is just gone. Where did it go? I'm probably speaking for many of us out there when I say that it feels like it was January yesterday, and this entire year has gone by in the blink of an eye. I am willing to bet that I also speak for a lot of us when I say that it didn't really go according to plan. Which is good, because God's plan is greater for all of our lives. I feel like one thing I've had to do lately is just surrender it to God and pray on my knees for protection of my family, for strength, courage, shoulders that are strong enough to withstand the battles of everyday life. And to make me better as a man, to make me better as a person. But it definitely hasn't gone how I thought it would. I'm in the process of rebuilding my life, rebuilding my income, rebuilding my career, and ultimately shifting to a place where I have more leverage. Because leverage is the ultimate goal in business, in life. Man, you cannot trade your time for money, or at least I don't feel like I can, because it's never enough. Just having your income tied to an hourly rate is so difficult. It makes it so hard to get ahead because you have to sacrifice your time. And without enough time, how will you build the vehicle to actually have leverage, to actually be self-employed, where you can work on larger projects that pay more money and are less dependent on your time or you being at a certain location? For me, at least, it's tied to my computer screen, doing some of the new work that I've been doing now, which is training AI models. I'm limited in what I can say on that due to NDAs, but there's an entire movement going on right now of people getting hired to train AI models for the big AI labs that are out there. You can name them or probably think of them off the top of your head, but they're hiring hundreds, thousands of people in some cases to create large data sets, training their AI models and the responses that are given. It's absolutely fascinating. And it's a sector of the economy that I wouldn't have even known existed if I hadn't been doing tons of exploring on job boards and looking around online on places like Indeed, Reddit, LinkedIn. LinkedIn has helped me get a couple of opportunities, and that's not a platform that I even had until this year. It's highly cringe, and there's not a lot of good content on there, but the direct messaging feature is crucial. People with money are on LinkedIn. And ultimately, as entrepreneurs, as people who want financial freedom, we have to go where the people who have money are. That is regardless of industry. So LinkedIn, at least having a profile on there, as humbling as it might be for someone like me who doesn't like spending a ton of time on platforms like that, it's really helped. But that's what I've been doing for work right now. I haven't taken any steps to monetize Duff Radio other than the Duff Radio Jukebox, which was short-lived, an app that I coded, and that's how we originally released Duff Radio Volume 3, the Duff Radio Mixtape Volume 3. It was the house album that we did. It was featuring OkCasheyy, T.S. Shaad, Jace Camden, Mighty Casual, Zajic, Riley, all the gang. But I originally rolled it out through this app that I had coded, and I was very proud of it. However, it just wasn't profitable. So the cost of keeping that code on Heroku was it was outweighing the streams that I was bringing in. So I just shut it down. Will I do something like that again in the future? Potentially. And the code already exists, so it's an easy update. I would have to decide if I want to make it an app on the App Store or just keep it on desktop only. Those are decisions that maybe we can make together with you all as the listener. Have you guys listened to the Duff Radio mixtapes? Let me know. We did Volume 1, Volume 2, and Volume 3 all last year. Those were parts of the big road trips that I took back and forth from New Mexico to Kansas City. We're coming up on a year of Duff Radio Volume 1, 10, 15. Crazy, because who gave you more in the last year than us? Who put out more music in the last year than us? We were really locked in, and I'm very, very proud of that work. We got our 10,000 hours in, and now just have to work on promotion and making sure that people know what's going on, making sure people know what we're doing. That's why we're here today. So, Duff Radio Volume 1, recorded at Emerald Dreams Lab in Kansas City, or actually Independence, Missouri, at their new location. Connor, Giddy Man, Cash Cam, Mighty Casual, Nick Brown played the guitar. Benny's on there. Shaad is on there twice. So if you haven't listened to that, it's one of, if not the best, the most unique underground hip-hop release of the year. Unique collaboration. Riley made the cover art. You guys go check that out. I'll link to it. And if that's not the best, then Volume 2 would take the crown in my eyes, because we gave you 7 tracks. One was a bonus with an unfinished verse from Jamal, but it was all a freestyle. Beautiful track. That one's, I think, my favorite of the year. It's I'm On with Riley and Jamal. We'll link to that in the description as well. You guys need to hear that one. Beautiful samples used on the entire project. Jace did an incredible job with the production, as did Connor, as did Giddy Man. We locked in at the Zoo Studios for that one. Recorded that in the winter. Early 2025 is when we put it out in January. Good times were had by all. Unique collaborations on that one too. Riley, Macc, STBtheDON on a track together. Gigantic intro track with Benny, Jamal, Riley. Giddy Man raps on that track too. The intro of the Duff Radio Mixtape, Volume 2. Lore. Absolute local Kansas City underground independent hip-hop rap lore. I will not sugarcoat it or phrase it any other way. We did our thing. And this brand has blossomed and turned into something that I could not have predicted it would. As in, we're actually releasing tracks on Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon, all over the globe. And people are listening to it. So, crazy. SoundCloud, listeners all over the world. We had Volume 3 as well, as I mentioned. We did a house project to do something a little bit different. Some more upbeat music. Brought in Jimmy Oakleaf to do some of the production on that. He did an incredible job. Shaad raps on a house beat. Another very unique project, and I eventually made that available on all platforms as well after taking it off of the Duff Radio Jukebox. I wanted to code that app because the way that artists are paid for their music via streaming services is pretty unfair. Artists make fractions of a penny every time you listen to their song. So it really takes a ton of listens to make money as full-time income through the streaming services. Forces artists to do things in a different way. As far as I'm aware, many artists are making their money through touring, concerts, and merchandise, rather than streaming services, although the streaming services generate huge sums of money every single year. So I wanted to be able to charge more money to listen to each track, and that's what led into that idea. Some of those people that I have worked with have put out a new album this weekend. That's Live by the Bag, which is an 8-track project featuring some of these guys that I've just mentioned. the Kansas City rap group. Live by the Bag is ConorChillOut, STBtheDON, TS Shaad, Mighty Casual. We'll link to that in the description as well. That's essentially where we're at. We're at 30 minutes right here, which is kind of how long I wanted to talk to you guys. If there's anything else that you guys want to touch on, just thoughts, leave it in the comments. If you want to have any particular guests on the show or guests from the past that you want to see back, let me know too. My email, I'll put out in the description. All social medias, you can reach me. You can reach the guys through. So never hesitate to reach out. I appreciate all you guys. Anybody out there who may have tuned into this, thank you for making me part of your day. Thank you for including these guys as part of your life. We're continuing forward. Going to go even harder. Going to continue to multiply the amount of work that we do. Capitalize, leverage the work that we've already done. Thank you guys. Peace out.